Salute Knicks Nation. What's going on? It's your boy Ari from Manhattan. It's December 15th, 2022, in between meetings. I meant to drop this last night, but got caught up. But I wanted to do a video on what people misunderstand about tanking and debunking the 5 common, tanking myths that I currently hear. For any of you guys that are new, we are the Toxic Boys. I'm Ari from Manhattan. Jay from Florida, and Papa Left are my co-hosts. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it. We keep it a buck. It's the side of the, the side of the fandom that always keeps it honest, doesn't censor ourselves and things like that. All right, before we get started, if you are wondering, that is an Ari behind an Ari for all my Entourage fans. So. Yep, Ari behind an Ari. All right. So let's get into it. Tanking. Why is such a controversial thing? You're either a tanker or you're, a win at all cost type of guy. And what happens a lot of times is the win at all cost type of people, kind of shame the tanking mentality. It's a loser's mentality for, wanting to increase your draft position when you know you have no chance of winning anything, apparently. So I'm going to go through the 5 common myths. And we'll go for that. I'm going to be doing some new computer stuff, so just bear with me for a second. All right. First, tanking myth. Tanking is asking the players to lose on purpose and to not try hard. It's asking the coach to throw games. So, obviously, you can't go out and run out people, players onto the court and tell them to tank, right? These guys are playing for their next contract. They're fighting for their lives. This is their job, man. So you can't tell them to not do good at their job and ruin their, money situation, right? So tanking is not asking the players to lose on purpose. It's also not asking the coach to throw games. And by throwing games, I mean, like playing Archidiakono a million minutes and, benching Randall. Yes, that could play a factor later on in the season, but that's not what tanking is. Tanking is something that's not on the player level. It's not on the coach level. Tanking starts at the top, right? On the Leon Rose, president of basketball operations. They're the ones that tank. It's not Tibbs' responsibility or the player's responsibility to tank. It's the front office's responsibility to tank. This is why I was against the Jalen Brunson signing. I figured let's keep the youth movement, keep rebuilding, let IQ run point. Worst comes to worst, you're boosting all the young guys' trade value. And then you can move them and whatnot. That's why I didn't want Jalen Brunson to come here, because I knew if Brunson came here, he's a great player. He's a very good player. It's not because I don't think he's a good player. It's not even about the money necessarily. It's just that he raises the floor of the team. When you sign Jalen Brunson, you're not tanking. So anyone that's asking the Knicks to tank, or that wants the Knicks to tank, it's too late. That ship has sailed. Listen, maybe in February, if we lose 17 out of 20 games like we did last year, maybe you could shut down Randall or RJ. Randall, RJ, or, Brunson. Shut down Brunson, obviously, the most, and let the young guys roll. But, that ship pretty much sailed when Jalen Brunson came here. But it's a common thing. Oh, I hear it on Twitter all the time. How are you going to ask these players to not try? How are you going to ask these players to throw games or whatever like that? Again, it's about the roster construction. It's not the player's responsibility nor the coach to tank. It's the front office's responsibility to tank. And they do that by trading their best players for future assets, like Utah did with, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and obviously San Antonio's tanking, trading Dejounte Murray, right? So it's not the players, not the coach. It's the front office is responsible for creating a roster that's conducive to tanking and with cap flexibility. Myth number 2. Tanking doesn't work because you're not going to get Wembanyama or Scoot anyway, right? You only have a 14% chance of getting the top pick, even if you have the worst record in the league, which is, terrible odds, right? This one drives me nuts because the point of tanking is not to get the number 1 pick. It's not to get the number 2 pick. It's not to get the number 3 pick. It's not even to get the number 6 pick. The point of tanking is to give your draft, your team, the best statistical chance, best statistical likelihood of getting the highest pick they possibly can. That's the goal of tanking. It's not to get the number 1 pick. I hate when people say that. Oh, you're not going to tank because you're not going to get one by winning. Anyway, it's like crazy. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's about giving your team the best statistical chance of getting the best pick that they can get, okay? The Knicks are obviously not going to be in the top 3 or the top 5 of the lottery this year, all right? But that's not the point of tanking. Like I just said for the second time, it's about to give you a chance to, give yourself the best opportunity to get the highest pick possible, right? For example, the Knicks end up in the 10 spot, right? As opposed, let's go with last year. They ended up in the 12 spot last year, and they missed the playoffs. Worst case scenario, right? If the Knicks shut down Randall or, started tanking after they lost 17 of the last 20 games in February, instead of being the 12th seed, they'd be the 8th seed ranked team. They'd be the 9th. They'd be the 9th seed, maybe, ranked team in a lottery, right? And then when you're the 8th or the 9th seed, 2 things happen. Number one, it takes less assets for you to move up into the top 4, top 5. Remember the Knicks wanted Jaden Ivey. Sorry, you can't get Jaden Ivey when you're the 12th pick. When you're the 8th pick, yeah, maybe you can give up a pick or 2 picks or whatever to jump 4 spots. And then you can get Jaden Ivey. But when you're the 12th pick, you're not moving up from 12 to 4. It's about getting within striking distance to get to the player you choose, the highest valued player in the lottery, right? Usually it's within anywhere between 2 to 3, 2 to 4 spots you could jump, right? Is usually where it is. So you want to be within 2 to 4 spots of, the top 5 players or however deep that draft is, right? That's the goal. It's not about getting the number 1 pick. It's about getting the best chances of getting the highest pick possible so you're within striking distance of making a move and it costs you less assets to move up in order to get your guy. What it also does is it protects your floor, okay? So in the NBA, you cannot drop more than 4 spots in the lottery. And that really only applies to the top 3 teams, right? Usually you can't drop more than 2 spots, okay? It protects your floor. So if you have the best odds and you're number 1 in the lottery, you're guaranteed a top 5 pick no matter what happens. No matter what happens, you're guaranteed a top 5 pick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen right now. I'm going to try to bring this in. It's my first time doing it. Give me a second. Let me see if I could do this the right way. Okay. Let's see how that works. Okay. So you see this table right here. Okay. So obviously the Knicks, for example, wouldn't be in the, as you can see, Houston, let's say they have the number 1 odds. They can't get anything worse than 5th, right? Orlando can't get anything worse than 6th, right? But when you get to where the Knicks would be over here, if you look at their positions, you really can't drop more than 1 or 2 spots over here, right? Look at the odds over here. You see, let's say the Knicks are going to be somewhere over here. This is from an old year, so don't. This is not where the Knicks are right now. But let's say the Knicks are somewhere over here. They're pretty much guaranteed the spot that they're at, and maybe they'll drop 1 or 2 spots. They most likely will not drop 1 or 2 spots. Look at these odds, right? So it protects your floor, right? It's very important to understand this, right? Oh, the Knicks have bad luck, whatever, It protects your floor, okay? If you're, let's say this is, 11th seed, you're pretty much either the 11th pick or going to be in the top 4. Look at the chances of you moving down. Nothing, pretty much, right? So it protects your floor, so you can't drop that far, all right? Very, very, very important thing to show you. So with regards to myth number 2, it's not about getting the top pick. It's about increasing your probability of getting the highest pick possible. So you're within striking distance of moving up and to get a person that you want without having to sacrifice as many assets. And 2, it protects your floor so you can't drop too much. So if you're instead of your 8, you're going to be guaranteed an 8th or 9th pick or a top 4 pick. Pretty much, you won't drop more than 9 or 10, right? Guaranteed. If you're 12, it's going to cost you more assets to move up. You're not going to be able to get the guy you want. And, you're further back and your floor is still lower. All right. Moving on. This one is the most illogical one out of all of it. Tanking never works for the Knicks. Oh, look at us. We've never moved up in the draft. Blah, 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 blah. Look at it. It's the 1 year we tanked. We got the 3rd pick, and it was R.J. Barrett. And the first 2 were Zion Williamson and John Morant, right? This is the worst argument ever because it just basically you're implying that it's a conspiracy theory. You're implying it's a conspiracy theory that tanking only works for small market teams because the NBA is trying to create buzz in those small market franchises, and it'll never work for a big market team like the Knicks. Even though the Lakers moved up into the top four, and they're like the biggest market team in the NBA besides the Knicks, and they're like the most prestigious franchise. All right. So that makes no sense. There's no evidence to suggest whatsoever that there's something against the Knicks. If the NBA was actually trying to do what's best for the NBA and try to fix it and rig it, they'd rig it for the Knicks, not against it. It's just math at the end of the day. It's just statistical. It's just statistics, all right? This idea that it doesn't work for the Knicks is fucking crazy, okay? You're a conspiracy theorist with no evidence whatsoever. That's an easy one. All right. Let's move to number 4. You can find gems all throughout the draft. You don't need a lottery pick. Oh, Jokic, second-round pick. Gilbert Arenas, second-round pick. Draymond Green, second-round pick. Giannis, the 15th pick or whatever. Kawhi Leonard, none of these guys are top 5 picks, right? You can find gems all throughout the draft. Listen, of course you can find gems throughout the entire draft. I think Quentin Grimes happens to be one of those gems, not obviously on the level of Giannis, obviously, but, of course you could find gems all throughout the draft. But I'm going to share my screen again and present to you just the data over here. Okay. So if you see this draft, if you see this chart right here, on the left-hand side over here, we have the percent chance of being an all-star, and on the bottom, the x-axis, I believe, I don't know, I mixed it up. On the bottom, you have the draft position. And as you can see by this logarithmic chart, when you're over here, you have a much higher likelihood. The earlier you are in the draft, you have a much, much, much higher likelihood of getting an all-star than if you're over here. Now, does it happen? Of course it happens. None of these are 0%, right? But as you see, and I find this interesting, that historically the third pick outperforms the second pick. And RJ Barrett just happened to be the third pick. But I'm saying historically the third pick outperforms the second pick. But if you're going to smooth out the data, right, this is what the line looks like. It's clearly inversely correlated. The higher you pick up, the more likelihood. I mean, it's directly correlated, excuse me. The higher pick you have, the more likely it is for you to get an all-star, and vice versa, okay? So yes, of course you can find gems all throughout the draft, right? But if you're looking at this, if you're the 12th pick, and we're gonna share a different thing right now. Give me 1 second. All right. So if you're the 12th pick, you have a 3.33% chance of your pick being an all-star, as opposed to the 5th pick, where it's a 30% chance. What I find interesting about this chart is that the 8, 9, 10, 11 range, this area right here, is where the Knicks should end up being. If the Knicks are anywhere over here, it's not going to be as good. But if they're somewhere over here, it's good. Obviously, the 8th pick is an outlier. Shout out to Jordan Hill and Kevin Knox. But, as you can see, it's completely descending. There's, the third one is more than the second one, but it's pretty much almost exactly accurate, right, to that chart. So, yes, you can find gems all throughout the draft. But your probability, and this is just math. Again, this is just math, guys. Your probability of getting an all-star, right, decreases dramatically once you get out of the lottery, okay? Dramatically. You have 3 times the chance of getting an all-star if you're the 5th pick, as opposed to making the NBA, let's say being the 15th pick, let's say, right? Which is where the Knicks will probably end up if they make the playoffs, right? 3x, 300% higher. And if you go back to myth 2, tanking doesn't work because you're not going to get the top 1 pick. The goal is not to land at 5. The goal is to land at 8 or 9 and then trade a couple of assets to jump to 5 or 6, to be within striking distance. That's what people get wrong about tanking. It's not about where you land. It's about giving yourself the highest probability to get the highest pick so that when you're within striking distance to target your guy and your floor is limited. You can't drop too far. That's what it is. But this is just math. So yes, you're right. You can find gems all throughout the draft, but look at the percent likelihood. It's almost directly correlated. So don't give me this stuff. This is math. You can say what you want, all right? Directly correlated. All right. Last but not least, with regards to tanking, the last myth, and it's not even a myth, it's true. Tanking guarantees nothing. And you're right, tanking does guarantee nothing. And I'm not going to debunk this myth. This one's actually right. But let me break it to you, Knicks fans. There are no guarantees in life. Death and taxes. That's it. The Cavs missed on Anthony Bennett, all right? Markelle Fultz ended up being a bust, okay? You could have the number one pick, and it could be a bust, without a doubt. But again, there are no guarantees in life, period, all right? Nothing. If you're going to think, oh, this is not guaranteed, you're going to have a tough life, my friend, all right? Everyone knows tanking guarantees you nothing. But I stand by the premise that if the Knicks don't tank, right, or if the Knicks constantly try to make win-now moves, they're just going to guarantee themselves premature win-now moves. They're going to guarantee themselves, mediocrity, or maybe they'll go deep in the playoffs, but they're not going to win anything, all right? The point of tanking is not to guarantee yourself anything. The point of tanking is, again, to give yourself the strongest and highest statistical probability of getting the highest draft pick you possibly can is possible. And again, you could have a 99% chance that you get a certain outcome, and the 1% chance could hit. So there are no guarantees in life. So just as a brief recap, tanking is not asking the players to lose on purpose. It's asking the front office to build a roster that's conducive to tanking. This is why I was against Jalen Brunson, in order to, give themselves the best lottery odds, keep the cap flexible, and do a true rebuild. So it's from the front office, not the players, not the coach. Myth number 2, tanking doesn't work because you're not going to get the top 1 or 2 pick. Again, we've already established this. That's not the point of tanking. The point of tanking is to get the highest statistical probability. Number 3, tanking doesn't work for the Knicks. Myth number 3, it doesn't work for the Knicks. You're a conspiracy theorist with absolute no evidence or data whatsoever. If the NBA was trying to do what's better for the NBA, they would actually rig it for the Knicks. So that's just a terrible myth. Myth number 4, you can find gems all throughout the draft. We've already established that, by the tables I just showed you, you have a much, much, much higher likelihood, a 300% higher chance of drafting an all-star at 5 than you do at 15, okay? So, yes, you can find gems all throughout the draft, but it's all numbers. It's all statistics and probability. So, you have a much better chance of finding gems if you're in the top 5, top 8 than you do later on in the draft. And number 5, tanking guarantees you nothing. Nothing in life guarantees you anything. Life is not guaranteed. You could wake up tomorrow and you could walk down the street and get hit by a bus. Nothing is guaranteed, okay? At all right? All we're trying to do is, stack the odds in our favor, stack the deck in our favor. And I stand by it. The point of tanking is, and it's too late for the Knicks. The Knicks aren't going to tank right now unless something really bad happens or unless they shut down Brunson. But I'm just saying in general, the point of tanking is, again, I've said it 100 times, to give yourself the highest statistical probability of getting the highest draft pick possible. So you're within striking distance of a very talented guy who could be an all-star, and also so you can't drop too far in the lottery. Worst case scenario, you go from 8 to 9 as opposed to 12, and you drop to, 13 or whatever, right? If we were the 8th pick last year and we tanked like a proper front office, we would either drafted Shadon Sharp, or we would have traded a pick to move up for Mathurin, or we would have traded 2 picks to move up for Jaden Ivey, okay? And the final thing about tanking, man, is that you have to think in the future, man. It's about the long-term vision of the right? This is what I always say all the time. Building, you can't skip steps in a rebuild. You have to sacrifice the present in order to benefit in the future, right? And that means, building a team that's more focused on the draft, more focused on developing players as opposed to wins, because they know that you're going to get a higher chance of getting a real number 1 guy. So that's my take on tanking. It's not going to happen for the Knicks this year. They're too good. And, Leon Rose already, like I said, for myth number 1, it's on the front office to tank, and Leon Rose decided to make the win now move and sign Brunson. But, tanking, like I said, doesn't always work. But it gives yourself a higher statistical, mathematical chance of working. So if you enjoy the video, like the video, share it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Keep the conversation going below as well. Are you for tanking? Are you against tanking? Do you think the benefits of tanking are outweighed by the fake, in my opinion, fake winning habits that teams build and the culture and all this stuff? Put it down below. I appreciate you guys. All right, from the hat, we signing out. Salute, salute, salute.